Hello and welcome to the Curator on Monocle Radio with me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Over the next 60 minutes, I'll be bringing some of the very best interviews and reports from the past week of coverage on Monocle Radio with highlights from our studios here in Midorihausen from around the world. This week, we profile Mexico's new president.
Her elevation to the presidency makes Mexico the second largest country, after Brazil, ever to have elected a woman as its head of state.
Plus, we speak with the mayor of Tirana.
You realize if you're officially the youngest capital in Europe, there must be a lot of kids out there.
All that and much more in the next hour, here on The Curator, with me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. We start the show talking about the biggest political story of the week, elections in India, which was the world's biggest election and was held in 7 phases over 6 weeks. Almost 1 billion people were eligible to vote, and now we have the results. To tell us more, here is Maya Sharma, a journalist based in Bengaluru.
Absolutely fascinating election results so far. Counting is, of course, still going on, but with electronic voting machines, we are expecting a very clear definite answer by later this evening. And the leadings coming in are extremely interesting. It does indeed look as if Narendra Modi and the BJP will be able to form the government once again along with their allies. But everything has a context. And considering how invulnerable the BJP was looking, what a strong man Narendra Modi was looking, and how many thought it was going to be an absolutely landslide victory, the results, the leadings coming in, are extremely interesting indeed. The opposition India alliance, with the Congress also as one of the major players, has been putting up a very good fight indeed. So while the BJP currently has leadings in about 200 in the late 200s, the India alliance has also crossed 200 seats in the 543-member House. So while it's very possible that the BJP will be able to form the government, it's not looking as if it will get a majority by itself and will have to rely on its allies. And that itself is a huge development because exit polls which came out also forecast a massive BJP victory. So it does look as if the feeling that perhaps there was a chipping away of the absolutely invulnerability of the BJP, maybe that feeling on the ground was indeed valid. And by the end of the day, the results may be very surprising indeed.
How many seats does a party or an alliance need to form a government?
There are 543 members in the House of Parliament, the Lok Sabha, the lower house of Parliament. The halfway mark for that would be 272. So the BJP and its allies need to cross that 272. Right now, the BJP is hovering around 240, 250. So they're likely to be able to get that. One of their allies in the south of India, in Andhra Pradesh, has done pretty well. So they will have to rely on Chandrababu Naidu and his followers to help make the numbers. In other places as well, they have done better than planned, as better than expected, like in Odisha. But they will have to rely on their allies. It's looking more and more that way to get past the 272 mark. It should be likely, but the very fact that we're even talking about combinations and the fact that it's a probability rather than a certainty, that itself is the big news of the day. 272 should be reached, but it will be. They'll know they'll have been in a fight.
What was the turnout in what was obviously a very challenging and huge logistical voting process?
The overall average turnout may have been just in the early 60s, just above 60%. Some states, of course, like West Bengal, crossed 80% voting. Urban areas like Delhi, Bengaluru, Mumbai didn't see great turnout, and that has been the pattern over the years. The urban areas are a little more apathetic when it comes to actually voting. Plus, also, there was a massive heat wave across India. It's still on in parts of the country. And getting people out to vote in that heat has been a huge challenge. And sadly, many polling officers, people on duty to conduct the polls, many of them have died of heat stroke, which is a very terrible thing indeed. So that was a huge challenge also. But overall, above 60%, which internationally may not be a bad record, but Indians do tend to be involved in their elections, and a higher turnout was in fact hoped for.
And I understand the counting process too is being affected by extreme weather.
Well, it is slower. We do have EVMs, electronic voting machines. So the voting process is much faster than in places where paper ballots are still being counted. But it is slower than expected, usually by noon, by early afternoon, you have a very clear idea of which way the results are actually going. But right now, very few results have come in, maybe about 20 or 30 actual results have come in. The leadings are what are being considered at the moment, but sometimes when the lead is huge, hundreds of thousands of votes, then you know that the candidate is really going to win. But it has been a much slower process today than it has been in the past. But by the end of the day, we'll certainly have most of the results out for sure, except in places where perhaps malpractice is alleged and recounting is asked for.
And yes, it's been a very busy week when it comes to elections. This time we're heading to Mexico. The country has elected its first female president, Claudia Sheinbaum. But as Andrew Muller explains, she has really been elected to continue the legacy of the incumbent President Obrador.
Mexican voters do not have the option of re-electing their president. Article 83 of Mexico's constitution restricts their head of state to a single 6-year term, what Mexicans call a sexenio. Mexico imposed the current presidential term limit, initially just 4 years, in 1917, for the reasons countries usually do, i.e. to prevent one individual from banging on forever. Mexico was thinking specifically of Porfirio Diaz, the amply moustached general who seized supreme power in 1876 and held it, actually or effectively, until 1911. Since a period of riotous instability between the 1910s and the 1930s, one hapless president, Pedro Lascurain, held office less than an hour, the 6-year term has proved a reliable institution. In that, every president since Lázaro Cárdenas in 1934 has served it and pushed off uncomplainingly when their hitch is up. The fact that one party, the Institutional Revolutionary Party, held the office from 1929 to 2000, while somewhat repetitive, further entrenched the tradition of a seamless handover. Incumbent President Andrés Manuel López Obrador of the National Regeneration Movement, better known as Morena, will doubtless go quietly when his term ends in September, but may do so with a wistful sigh at his approval ratings, a bountiful 60%. Had he been permitted to stand in this past weekend's presidential election, he would nigh certainly have won it. President Obrador, AMLO, as he is clearly largely affectionately known, will be deriving some consolation from the knowledge that he will be handing over the presidential sash and the keys to the National Palace to his preferred successor. Morena's Claudia Sheinbaum is an environmental scientist by trade, more recently mayor of Mexico City, as AMLO was before her. She will be a traditionally macho country's first female president and an overwhelmingly Catholic country's first Jewish president. She won by a street, the nearly 60% of the vote she attracted, an uncannily accurate echo of AMLO's approval rating.
Mexico! Viva Mexico! Viva Mexico!
There has been and will be a great deal of analysis on who President-elect Sheinbaum is and what she will do with her allotted 6 years, and so there should be. Her elevation to the presidency makes Mexico the second largest country, after Brazil, ever to have elected a woman as its head of state. And before anyone writes in, we know India, Bangladesh and Pakistan have or have had female prime ministers, but they are or were heads of government, not heads of state, and we know that if you want to get really picky about it, Pakistan and India and Nigeria, among others, have had female heads of state, i.e. Queen Victoria and or Queen Elizabeth II, but nobody voted for them, so there. But before President Sheinbaum is sworn in, it is worth reflecting on the term of her predecessor and what Mexican voters seem to be hoping they'll get 6 more years of. Most overseas coverage of AMLO went heavy on his populist showboating, his insistence on taking public transport, doing his own shopping, selling the presidential plane to Tajikistan, and his daily live morning press conference.
Sobre las elecciones en Chihuahua, pues no.
often blowing out past 2 hours as it devolved into lurid harangues of foes real and imagined.
Pertenecen a las mafias del poder económico o del poder político en el mundo.
Rambling disquisitions on Mexican history, singing folk tunes,
sin conocer jamás fronteras.
and unburdening himself generally of whatever else popped into the presidential head.
No se sabe. ¿Ustedes creen que los mexicanos?
However, in between inveighing interminably against his enemies and riffing on the heroics of Pancho Villa on breakfast television, AMLO did get stuff done. A huge bump in the minimum wage, a generally harmonious, productive, even encouraging relationship with trades unions, big spending on infrastructure and welfare. As of this broadcast, Mexico's economy generally is posting annual growth of 3% or so, which is none too shabby. Public and private investment are at record highs. Unemployment is below 3%. Arguably most importantly, the number of Mexicans living in poverty has fallen during AMLO's term from 52 million to 47 million. To be clear, 47 million is way too many, especially for a country of Mexico's immense possibilities, but there is no doubt that inroads have been made. AMLO is no less a blowhard than most other charismatic populists, but unlike most other charismatic populists, he has proved, once in office, to be not only a blowhard. President-elect Sheinbaum is not a blowhard, nor especially charismatic. By general inclination, she is a detail-oriented technocrat. She, for example, took COVID-19 and climate extremely seriously while running Mexico City. AMLO has seemed merely annoyed by both. If one is being optimistic, one might hope that Sheinbaum's less spectacular approach will equip her to take on the stuff that AMLO did not, would not, or could not address. An amount of general democratic backsliding, an indifference to the quite extraordinary annexation of chunks of Mexico's economy by Mexico's military, and rampant violence related to the drug trade. On AMLO's watch, at least 175,000 people have been murdered, 43,000 more reported missing, and both are likely undercounts.
Authorities in Mexico say 10 bodies have been found scattered around the once popular tourist destination of Acapulco. Officials have linked the increase in violence to drug cartels, and the gruesome discoveries come less than 2 weeks before Mexico holds its presidential election.
This election campaign itself had casualties. Perhaps 40 candidates in various contests across Mexico were killed, and the mayor of the Michoacan town of Cotilla, Yolanda Sanchez, was assassinated along with her bodyguard earlier this week. It is common for charismatic populists to be followed into office by quieter, calmer figures, but they're usually quieter, calmer figures who are also their opponents, to whom a weary nation has turned. President-elect Sheinbaum is about as different from her predecessor as a political ally can be. We're about to find out whether Mexico's voters value substance as much as style. For Monocle Radio, I'm Andrew Muller.
You are listening to The Curator on Monocle Radio with me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. And the urbanist asks this week, how can we build better cities for future generations? Well, we have a report from Bratislava, which hosted the Start with Children Summit, to discuss how to create safer and greener cities with children's health in mind. One of those in attendance was the mayor of Tirana, the capital of Albania, a city that has been working hard to put children first. He told Andrew Tuck all about it.
Ariel, I don't think that, maybe some people know, but outside of this world of urbanism, I don't think people realise how well you've done with Tirana, making it into a child-friendly city and putting children at the centre of the planning process. Just tell us why that happened.
I think it became pretty relevant and known to people that all of us who had terrible childhoods from the 80s and the 90s were growing to become really angry grown-ups. Angry in politics, angry in media, angry in sport, angry in arts. So we sort of started to think, well, wait a minute. The only thing we have in common is that we were raised in sort of brutal last days of communism or early casino capitalism, no love, no play. And play is a serious business for kids. Then people say, well, there's no kids. Kids don't vote, kids don't pay taxes. You realize if you're officially the youngest capital in Europe, there must be a lot of kids out there. They're probably couch potatoes in their iPads and their iPhones. And the only way to get them out was to endanger them playing between cars. So we started focusing on how kids should really have their place in society. They're also shareholders. They may not pay now taxes or vote, but they will eventually. And then we realized on what a domino effect this had. Building a playground in every neighborhood not only brought the kids out, brought the parents out, and brought the grandparents out. It added to public safety. We haven't added one single policeman on the street since when I took office. But it's much safer now. We don't spend a lot of, we don't have the millions for CCTV and for all the flat screens that track everyone in the city. But grannies do and grandfathers do, and if there's life in the community, if there's a youth concert, and then there's people out in the pubs. And I think in every natural ecosystem, there is an indicative species. You clean a river and you can see the fish coming back. You clean a lake, you can see the ducks coming back. You build the city right, and when you see at 3 a.m. after the pubs, women alone on a bike, that is an indicative species that the city has done something right. That otherwise this species that was bullied because she was a woman, because she was on a bike, because it was late at night, doesn't happen anymore. So it has brought more than just the serious business of play to the epicenter of public life. It has also made the city safer, and it has made the community a lot more cooperative.
You showed a huge enactment of Skanderberg Square, this epic square, the biggest agora, as you described it, in Europe. And you took away all the cars. You gave it initially to like one day to see how it would work. Again, how's that been adopted by people? Because you also showed that there's lots of opposition to all change in Tirana. How has that been adopted now by the city?
It is a canvas. A square should be a canvas. It is not monofunctional. It is multifunctional. So, just yesterday before I left here, on one patch of the square, they were having a street food festival. So everybody brought their food trucks. And then, a group from Basel was doing sort of the Berlin techno rave on another part of the square. And today they're putting the scaffolding because Albania qualified for the Euro final. So it's going to be a mini stadium fan zone. So it's like an origami. It's a multifunctional square. Squares before, at least in my experience, were there for the party leader to vomit their propaganda about how we are, the only success story and the shining beacon of communism. Well, that was a fiasco. The enemy that we built so many bunkers to protect each other from never showed up. So basically now the bunkers have become places of play and places of tourism. And squares, instead of, the spewing propaganda, have become places of showing up for life, literally. Not showing up just physically to cross the square, but showing up to be. And the closer, the square, it's actually not a square, it's the philosophy of pyramid. And when you're in the center, you're at the same height where the dictator's monument was. So basically we're telling people now you are the most important guy in town. The average person who's elevated as the leader of this city.
Just before we let you go, because the conference is about to begin, just tell us something you think that listeners, other civic leaders in here should take away from this conference. What's the one thing you think is inspiring?
Well, look,
people?
you're a British-based radio and publication, and there's elections now in Europe. I think for voters now, the best question they can ask themselves is, what is this person done or can do for my children? And if you look at every politician with that lens, it will make a big, big difference. If you look at the populists who are talking about inflammatory rhetoric, how does that help your kid? And what has it done for your children? If you see someone that said, no, wait a minute, he's good in schools, he can deliver on the meals, he really gets it that in the early 3 years, kids get their formation. He understands that, kids that can play in a team will become better adults and not angry politicians. If they can answer that question, Europe can make wise chances in the voting booths.
This week we also played a special EU election series. Let's go to the Baltics. For the 3 Baltic countries, Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, who joined the European Union after half a century of Soviet occupation, the EU has always had a strong security dimension. The EU now heads an election with a war on its eastern doorstep, a war which has given the Baltic states a more prominent role in Brussels. In our continuing daily series on the upcoming European elections, we dispatched our Helsinki correspondent Petri Burtsov to the Estonian capital, Tallinn.
Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania are in many ways poster children of EU enlargement. They are democratic, stable and open and have benefited immensely from membership in the Union. Joining both EU and NATO in 2004 was an immense symbolic change for the three Baltic states, which were occupied by the Soviet Union since the Second World War. It was nothing short of freedom after half a century of oppression and tyranny, which is also why voter turnout has traditionally been low in these countries in the European elections. It was more about joining the club than reshaping Europe. But that was before Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, which brought back painful memories for the Baltic states. The region now heads to the polls in a situation where their freedom depends on the choices that the rest of Europe makes in terms of security and defense. So there is only one issue on voters' minds.
Security, war in Ukraine.
Europe and defending Europe. So Russia is a big threat and everybody has to understand how big threat it is, and we have to work on this together.
What do you expect in very concrete terms?
Helping Ukraine. This is very important, and also defense industry. We have to build up a bigger and better defense industry in Europe, in every country.
More funds to the protection policies.
What about for you?
Yeah, the same.
Same. And do you think the EU has done enough in this regard, or do you want it to do a bit more?
Of course more, because at the moment it's marginal what they've done. They have to do more.
Of course, issues such as the rising cost of living, energy costs and inflation touch people in the Baltic countries just as they do anywhere else in the EU. But because of their history, are the voters in the region perhaps more willing to make the sacrifices needed to keep Russia at bay and to support Ukraine? I put this question to Toni Saarts, an Estonian political scientist and associate professor of comparative politics at Tallinn University.
People in the Baltic states and also in other Eastern European countries, especially in Poland, they are more willing to provide to sacrifices because for them Russia is posing an existential threat. In the context of the war in Ukraine, the EU has become also more securitized. People somehow connect the EU, the defense against the Russian ambitions, geopolitics and so on. So they somehow see the EU as one of the guarantees against the security threats.
One of the key issues, at least if you talk to political scientists in Western Europe, is the rise of the far right in these elections and what that might mean for the EU. This is not the case in the Baltic countries. But what is concerning to many is how the Russian speakers, roughly a quarter of the population in Estonia and Latvia, will vote.
The narrative in which we might see the rise of the radical populist right all across Europe, it's not actually true for the Baltic countries. Both in Estonia and in Latvia, the populist radical right parties are not so popular. Probably they would get only 1 or 2 seats in the European Parliament. Both in Estonia and especially in Latvia, you can see the parties and some candidates which have become relatively popular among the Russian speakers who are rather promoting the Kremlin narrative about the war in Ukraine, about the EU, NATO and so on. So we cannot ignore the potential of protest voting among Russian speakers.
There's a very palpable sense in Estonia that these EU elections are more important than the previous ones. The Union, which has given the country and its Baltic neighbors so much, is a stalwart just as much as NATO is against the threat rising from the east.
for Estonia and for the other Baltic states, it's very much an existential issue. The EU, Russia, geopolitics, they belong together, and I guess that for many voters, it's obvious that if you want to defend Estonians or Latvia's security interests at the EU level, then you turn out and also vote at the EU elections.
Despite the sense that the EU could do more to help Ukraine and to isolate Russia, you would be hard-pressed to find a region that loves the EU more than the Baltic states do.
You think it's been a good thing for Estonia to have joined?
Yeah, of course. We have so much more thanks to EU. We have better transportation, better roads. Yeah, I think it's very good for us.
Absolutely. It's not only been good benefit for Estonia, it's for Europe. Europe is a paradise. If you have traveled around the world, then we all live in a paradise. I was less than a week ago in Ireland. Let's say 50 years ago, it was not possible to live the life like we do at the moment. If we want to go to holiday, we take a car, we cross the border without pass control, and we go and we enjoy other cultures, different environment. I think European Union is one of the most important institutions of all time in European history.
For Monocle in Tallinn, I'm Petri Burtsov.
UBS has over 900 investment analysts from over 100 different countries.
Over 900 of the sharpest minds and freshest thinkers in the world of finance today.
To find out how we could help you,
contact us at ubs.com.
We're back with The Curator. This week marks the centenary of the death of Czech writer Kafka. A new short story collection, A Cage in Search of a Bird, has been published to mark the occasion. Charlie Kaufman, the mind behind mind-bending stories such as Being Joe Malkovich and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, has a story in the book. Monocle's Robert Baum caught up with Kaufman and began by asking him what tone and feel came to mind when he was asked to write a Kafkaesque story.
I didn't have a story in mind when I was approached, and I sort of struggled, as I think I always do, trying to determine what the tone would be. So I played around with a lot of things, tried to sort of think about if I wanted to make it feel like Kafka or if I wanted to maybe sort of have it through my own lens. And I thought that was better. I didn't want to do a parody. I didn't want to do something that was like, okay, I'm imitating Kafka. So I started to think about the things that interested me about Kafka's work when I first read it, which was when I was a teenager. And I think the dreaminess of it, of the sense of being lost in a situation, trying to understand the world that you're in and what it's asking of you, and ultimately not being able to. So that's what I was playing with.
Yeah, and there always seems to be in Kafka, and this is how your story kind of takes flight. There's a bit like an episode of Quantum Leap where Sam is just always dropped into a scenario and has to figure out the language and the people around him. And this is exactly what happens in your story, if I may say so. That's how it seems to me. And it's a beguiling place to begin. It starts with a character called I, who seems to be a writer of some sort, and he's being questioned by an interviewer on stage with other people at a book signing or a reading. I guess this is close to Kafka's heart, close to your heart, perhaps, Charlie.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking about this morning, and maybe for the first time it occurred to me, because I was thinking about the trial, and it occurred to me, I wonder what happened to Joseph K. before the trial. Was his life different, or was it a series of these things? And I think I understood it to be, it was kind of normal until this point, but I don't know. It seems odd that he would suddenly be thrust into the situation. So I was thinking about that with my character as well. And so you said Quantum Leap, and he's dropped into this story and has to sort of make sense of it. I think that's pretty accurate.
And I guess also such a Kafkaesque thing or a theme in Kafka's stories is is the punishment seems to come first. We witness to the punishment or the sentencing, and then we and through the characters' actions and words and their interior life understand what on earth it was that this poor guy did. And we go on a story, it seems, mostly at night with the character of your story.
Yeah, so, well, I mean, he's written a book, and he's doing the reading, as you said, and the person who's moderating the conversation is reading an excerpt from his book, and he realizes that he doesn't recognize anything that she's reading, and he doesn't believe that he wrote it. In fact, he thinks she's trying to sort of prank him. But eventually he realizes when he looks at the book, the excerpt, that he did write it, and he doesn't understand even what it means. And the rest of the story follows him through that reading on his way home, and everything is new to him and strange to him and unrecognizable to him, including his apartment.
And he's incapable of being definitive, I suppose. Everything is coming at him to kind of fast traffic lights on a road at night. It seems that life is coming at him like this. He finds himself in this situation. And this is something that's so wonderful to draw on the wellspring of Kafka. It's just something you've done, I believe, in the way that he can only imagine things and think things and guess things. And you say that, he walks past a cafe on the corner and it was open until 11 a.m., he supposed. And it would probably be his favourite cafe, he believed. He's incapable of being definitive about what might well be the habits and tenets of his own life.
Yeah, and it's unclear if that sort of attitude comes from what preceded it, which is that he didn't write this book that he supposedly wrote. So everything would be up for grabs after that. He doesn't know who he is, and he's at sea. And I kind of feel that way often. What is it that makes me me? Am I attached to my opinions and beliefs? Is it something that I grab onto because I need to have some sort of identity to understand myself, or am I really this person that I present to the world?
Charlie, I don't want to be too punctilious about this notion of the Kafkaesque, because obviously the subtitle to this great collection, A Cage Went in Search of a Bird, for which you've written a story, but it's not subtitled 10 stories that inspired by Franz Kafka or the work of Franz Kafka. There's something specific about Kafkaesque that seems to exist way above and beyond the writings of Franz Kafka. Is that true, or have we just been taking that Kafkaesque idea for a walk for a century or so?
I don't know. I had to throw it out. I felt like I can't attach myself to this Kafkaesque thing. I just have to write a story. And I guess my stuff has been compared to Kafka's. So I figured, well, if I write a story, then they can compare it to Kafka and I'll be safe. But it's mine. Obviously, I was influenced by him. He was important to me when I was young. And so I figured it'll just be what it'll be.
And now we hear from a practitioner of the nearly forgotten art of reportage illustration. George Butler has spent the last 18 years of his life cutting ink and paper to zones of conflict and crisis, using drawing to slow down his reporting of people's struggles to gain a perspective that he believes is missing amid the frantic churn of the standard news cycle. Having reported from datelines including Afghanistan, Nepal, and Gaza, his new book, Ukraine, Remember Also Me, is released this month and features illustrations and testimonies of the people Butler met on his trips to Ukraine in 2022 and 2023, following Russia's invasion of the country. Monocle's Gunnar Gronlid headed to Butler's exhibition of his new work at Gallery Different in London to hear about the work, and began by asking him how he started out in something as niche as reportage illustration, and why he ended up covering wars and conflicts.
I did illustration at university at Kingston, and I really just pen and ink drawing from life on location was where I felt most comfortable, and I spent a lot of time in markets in London and talking to people, and all the people I admired, like people like Ronald Searle and some of the Second World War artists, had drawn for newspapers in courtrooms or in the war in Bosnia, or Linda Kitson in the Falklands. And I suppose as a young man I just thought that was exciting and I'd like to do it, and I had this obsession about drawing from life and making it accurate and inky, and that's what I set out to do about 15 years ago. But of course, as I sort of learned my trade, and particularly in Ukraine most recently, where I was commissioned to go for a couple of magazines in Germany and America, I realised that the story that the person's telling over your shoulder whilst you're drawing is in fact almost possibly more important and certainly more poignant and valuable as the drawing itself.
And can you explain a little bit about your style, how you express all of those things that are being told to you over the shoulder? I mean, just walking through the gallery now, I see little things like newspaper clippings and jottings of notes on the drawings, almost like what a journalist would do in their notebook, but it's right there on the piece of art. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I make pen and ink drawings on an A2 board, so often standing up from life. So there's this quite immediate fluency to the drawing up to the line, and I'm usually drawing for anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour if someone's, depending on how patient people are when I'm interviewing them, depending on the situation. And then I'm picking out areas of colour that I think are interesting. There's sometimes very detailed patches and then big spaces of white, which I think these are composite images, but I think they leave sort of space for the viewer's imagination. And I think that's important at the moment. We might talk about it more in a minute, but we receive huge amounts of information, quite often passively, through photographs and film, and these are an alternative moment to sort of sit quietly with something that you might know a little bit about. It's not being forced upon you. It is in theory supposed to be a beautiful image, even if it is of an abhorrent scene, and that I think allows people to sort of be unthreatened and to approach a subject slightly differently.
Yeah, can you expand a little bit upon that? Because, for example, you mentioned at the beginning of the exhibition that the Ukraine war, naturally, because now we all have smartphones in our pockets and we can take these highly detailed images live and they are bombarding our social media feeds, and so we're seeing all this come through, and yet I think for a lot of us still there is a kind of disconnect from the actual human element of what is happening on the ground, which you'd think it'd be the opposite with social media, but actually there is a disconnect. So for you, what is the sort of value of taking a step back and actually cutting out a lot of the detail of what is literally there in the scene, and representing what is it that you're looking for? What are the details that you get sort of hooked on?
I think it's true humanity in a very raw way. So there's sort of the love and the resolve and the family and the community that I have found when sitting in those places and drawing. Is just, it doesn't matter what you're drawing or if it's any good. The process of doing it over an hour or 2 hours is often enough just to open that door to some of the people above, like Vladimir and Madame Olga. And I think that the way we receive our news, the way that it's captured and the way that it's delivered, quite often overlook some of those stories. It's not sensational enough, it's not exciting enough, you don't click, you don't like, or you don't buy the newspaper. So I think we're missing out, and I think we're supposed to be more interconnected than ever, but in fact we're running the risk of having a much shallower understanding of people in Ukraine or in Donetsk or in Gaza City at the moment, even though we know that it's coming through like thick and fast. We've only got to pick up our mobiles. So these drawings are my antidote to that. It's analogue, it's old-fashioned, but I think it's really important. I had a man yesterday, Vladimir, upstairs, who I've drawn, and I drew him lying on his bed. He's a soldier, his daughter was living in Poland, and he texted me yesterday saying, I saw the book on Instagram, can I buy 5 copies? I've got a gift for you, you have to come back. And I said, and I'll obviously give you some copies of the book. And I said, how are you? And he's like, oh, I'm fine. I've got PTSD, but life's carrying on, and we've got no choice. And that connection would just not have happened had I not spent an hour with him drawing.
And we're back. Time for Food Neighborhoods. This time it's a special one. Let's join Monocle's Deputy Head of Radio, Tom Webb, as he takes us on a whistle-stop tour of this year's Monocle Body Market in Zurich.
Welcome to the Monocle Body Market. It is absolutely spectacular today. Body Market being the start of the swim season, and we have a packed Monocle Studios. It's spilling out onto the street. We have the finest clothes, the finest jewellery. The birds are tweeting. But it's all about the food here today. And we start with some of the best food and drink you can get in not only the market, but in Zurich. I'm joined now by the team behind the Grand Hotel Belvedere. I've got Will with me and Lawrence. We were just talking about the food. I am going to start with Will. What have we got on offer today?
So today we've got a plant-based beetroot salad. So we've got all different types of beetroot. So in the mountains it's really fantastic to grow beetroots there. So we really harness that product for a lot of the year, and we can preserve it down as well. So this is just showcasing how we can preserve. So we've got kind of like a dehydrated chewy beetroots, and then we've got like a beetroot jerky as well, which is fantastic for preserving. We use like cashew cheese, which is made in Switzerland, in Emmental, and then some walnuts as well, candies, which also comes from Switzerland as well. So we're really using our terroir to the maximum, and also incorporating plant-based cuisine as well.
And do you have anything sweet for those looking for dessert?
Yes, we do. We've got a wild blueberry tart. So the wild blueberries, again, come from the mountains, which is great. And they get frozen down in the peak season, then we use them throughout the year, which is great. And then that's served with a toasted Swiss meringue as well.
And if I'm not staying at the Hotel Belvedere, where can I get this from?
There's only one place to get it. That's the Hotel Belvedere. So if you want it, you got to join us.
And you mentioned you've got all year round food. Is there anything seasonal we can look forward to?
Absolutely, yeah. Wild mushrooms. We do a crispy wild mushroom shawarma. So we basically get a skewer and all of the wild mushrooms at the chef's forage. We sort of cook them down, and then we put them on a skewer, and then we roll them in a batter and deep fry them and serve them on the skewer deep fried, which is really lovely.
So I've got a bit thirsty now listening to all of that. Lawrence, what can we drink here while we're visiting the Bardi market?
So we brought from the Grand Hotel Belvedere our local craft beer, which is brewed in the Bernese Oberland. The hotel is located in Wengen. These guys are down in the valley in Frutigen. So it's a couple who has a microbrewery who makes custom beers. So we were looking for a can and a custom can. So if you want a custom can, you have to order 250,000 of them, which is obviously too much for a hotel. So we found Ginette and Tino. These are the two brewers in Frutigen, and they do our custom craft beer. We can order 100, we can order 50, and these are just fantastic partners. She's a beer sommelier, so this is a nice blonde beer you can enjoy right here.
And if I want to enjoy it in the winter and the summer while keeping it cool, that is possible.
Yeah, that's the history of it. We buy a can, right? The can we took because if you go skiing, you can put it in your backpack or in your jacket. You have to put it 2 minutes in the snow when it's ice cold. In summer, when you're on a hike, you just put it in the mountain river or the mountain lake. It takes 3 minutes and it's ice cold.
Sounds wonderful. You've also got some unique liquors by the look of things. What is that? What's in the ingredients?
Yes, we brought the Aurora, our custom-made drink by the Cocktail, a cocktail maker out of Zurich, right here. So I picked them up yesterday. So this is made out of elderflower, gin, sake. What else?
Orange blossom as well.
Orange blossom is in there, exactly. And it's super refreshing summer drink.
Well, cheers to you. Thank you very much. I will leave you to it and speak soon. I'm heading out into the sunshine once more. And if you're feeling a little bit thirsty, there is a Monocle pop-up bar which has been serving alcohol since 10 a.m. I'm just looking at the ingredients list now. We've got a Campari orange slushy, a Negroni, of course, and an Aperol Spritz. Beautiful bar sitting in the sunshine here. But I am going to get something more substantial. I'm going to eat something from Madame Somme. I'm here with the team, Arno and Yves. Hello.
Hi there. Hey.
There's steam. There's steam literally coming out of this wonderful little pop-up. Explain, it's dim sum on the menu.
Absolutely. So we're here at Monocle in Zeeveld. We have Madame Somme dumplings. For you, we have two dishes. The first one is vegetarian. So we have a green Thai curry, 3 pieces, and then we also have some shiitake dumplings. In the meat portion, we have pork belly dumplings that we did together with Nenad, so a chef here in Zurich, and Wagyu beef. So it's a Wagyu beef with a reduced beef jus. And then on top of that, we put a bit of furikake and like a seasoning sauce to make it extra juicy.
And your carbon footprint is not Wagyu beef from Japan, I'm guessing?
Wagyu beef from around the corner here in Aargau.
How wonderful. And you've literally steamed these just for me. There's quite a lot here. I'm not going to have all of it. What do you recommend I go for?
I recommend you take a piece of each. Just one, like that. You try one of each.
I'm going to do exactly that. Now, you're putting extra seasoning on. It's not simply 2 beautiful colours of dumplings. What have we got on top here?
So on top is a furikake, so it's like a Japanese rice seasoning that we do with nori. There's different types of sesame, and then we also have some fried corn and wasabi nuts that we blitz, so that you have a bit of extra crunch. And then the sauce is a mix of soy sauce, ginger, lime juice, all the good stuff that really brings this extra umami.
So I'm going to start with the green, assuming that's the Thai green.
Exactly. The green one, slightly spicy, the Thai curry. It's very full-bodied, and yeah, give it a taste.
So as I do this, if you can tell me where you got your ingredients from the Thai green.
So the Thai green curry, it's basically vegetable mix. There's carrots, potatoes, green beans, and then we make like a coconut cream, a cashew paste as well, and we like make the cream infused with kaffir lime leaves, galangan, and so on. So all the good stuff that you have in a classic Thai green curry.
And the texture is absolutely wonderful. I was worried it was going to be very sloppy. It's so creamy. There's a nice kick to it. Yeah, where's the spice?
Yeah, so the spice is just from chilies that we put inside.
And I'm going to go for the red one now. They're all different colours. I've got green, red, yellow, black.
The red one is more earthy. Obviously, shiitake mushroom, so that's a very beautiful mushroom that a lot of people like. And we make a cream sauce with it. And then it's something special here with us is that we add chestnuts to it. So you have it's to kind of complement this earthy flavors, and then to kind of brighten it up, we add fresh cut chives.
Is there a hint of truffle in this?
No.
What is the truffle taste?
Well,
the chestnuts?
The earthy, yeah, exactly. It's the earthy flavor of
and the mushrooms
exactly.
in the end. Truffle very earthy in general, so you always get the same kind of notes.
I'm going to have a bit of meat now. Going for the black one. This must be the ragu, yes?
This is the Swiss Wagyu. So that's really a very, very simple dumpling that we really focus on taste. We use, like Arno said already before, we use the Swiss Wagyu beef from Aargau, from a producer in Switzerland. He produced very small quantities of this, and we went to visit his farm, and that's how we kind of got into this product. And then we add a basic beef choux, so we really have a very pure meat taste to really bring forward the Wagyu taste, yeah.
It's beautifully cooked. The meat is so tender. How did you get it so perfect for me?
Well,
7. I mean, so that's a special thing of Madame Soum actually, is that it's extremely easy to make. You get the dumplings, so we produce everything fresh, and then we flash freeze it so that it keeps the perfect texture. And then from frozen, you steam it 7 minutes, and you have dumplings as if they were freshly made. And so that's really, the cooking inside. That's something that we do beforehand. That's the flavors, that's the texture, that's all of that. And then what people need to do at home is just, steam it 7 minutes properly, and then you have the dumpling that you just tasted.
And I've just ended on the yellow one, the pork. Absolutely gorgeous, such generous servings of meat. Really, really delicious. What is the business model? How are you getting these out to customers?
So we produce, as I said, we produce everything in our kitchen in here in Dubendorf, so in Zurich. We flash freeze it, and then people can order on our website online, and we deliver it all over Switzerland frozen. So
and
you
now,
order today, and tomorrow it's delivered.
And now not just Switzerland, also London.
Exactly.
Now we're also
we're all over
the
UK. We basically started a month ago, and also there you can order it on our website madamsom.uk, and you get it delivered the next day with DPD in front of your door.
Congratulations. Absolutely delicious. Thank you so much for cooking for me. That's everything from Food Neighbourhoods in the Bardi Market. I will say goodbye to you with the tweeting birds and the brilliant sunshine. We'll be back next year if you missed it.
And yes, it's been an election-heavy curator, but what can we do? So many important elections in 1 week. So this time I decided to do an election special global countdown, where I look at the #1 songs from countries that had elections recently, like the ones I mentioned already, like India and Mexico, but also Belgium, Madagascar, and South Africa.
What could that music possibly mean, except that Monocle's senior reporter, Fernando Augusto Pacheco, is here for this week's Global Countdown. Fernando, we have a special one this week, an election special. We've done so much serious news coverage of the elections on The Briefing, The Globalist, all of our shows for the past week or so. So this is the lighter side.
It's a bit of a crazy idea, but it is true. It's such an important year for elections everywhere, Chris. And especially around this week, last week or next week, so many countries are voting for a different president, prime minister, or whatever. And we have a very interesting selection. They're very different countries as well. Let's see if their music taste is very different as well.
I'm sure it is going to be quite different just because of the list, right? It is such a range of different countries. So where are we headed to first? Which we're not going in the order that the elections themselves were held. We're just going to keep the simple alphabetical order, right?
Alphabetical order, so there's no best or worst, it's just different countries here. We're starting with Belgium. They haven't voted yet. They will this Sunday. So let's look at who is number one in Belgium. Unfortunately, it's not a Belgian artist.
Shame.
It's the North American singer Billie Eilish, but I have to say, Chris, I do like her. And this is her new single called Lunch, which we'll talk about it after listening to this.
You need to see a volunteer. Now she's smiling ear to ear. She's the headlights on the deer. I said it all before, but I'll say it again.
She is fast developing into a superstar, isn't she?
I'm going to come out here, not as gay, but I will say that I'm a fan of Billie Eilish. There are names for the fans, the Swifties or whatever, the monsters. But I wonder, what is the name for a Billie Eilish fan? I should find out this, actually.
Is there not somebody might call into this show to tell us? The Billies? I don't know what.
The Billies.
I don't have a good one for you,
and this song's quite cool. She said that this song helped to understand her sexuality as well. The song's quite explicit. Is a celebration of queer love. She says, I could eat that girl for lunch. Yes, she dances on my tongue. Very cool song.
All right. Well, let's move quite a hard right turn, I would say now. We're moving on to India.
India, which is, that's the biggest election of them all. We had surprise results. Modi's still going to be the prime minister, but with not so much of a majority there. But let's look at the number one song. This is interesting, Chris, because India is very unique. The number one songs from India are usually soundtracks of films. And the singer themselves, they're not actually in the films. So they're called playback singers, or ghost singers. So the actors kind of dub, so it's not necessarily the actor that is singing the song. So it's quite an interesting, very unique to the Indian music charts. But let's have a listen to Arijit Singh with Sajni from the film Lapata Ladies.
Oh Sajni re, kaise kate din raat, kaise ho tujhse baat.
That was a great tune there by Arijit Singh, who is a very famous playback singer, I have to say.
Playback singer. It's such a strange concept, but I guess every country has its own version of music. And sort of how it's presented.
And this film apparently is like a comedy drama. Two newlywed brides, they got exchanged on a train journey to their husbands' houses. So I think they go to the different husband. So there's a lot of mix-ups in this film. But there's a beautiful ballad there.
It is a beautiful ballad. We'll take that one. Before we get to the next track, we just need to emphasize that our producer, Vinny, back in the studio, has clarified for us that indeed Billie Eilish fans are known as avocados.
I will resign as a fan of Billie because I hate avocados. But, I will definitely read up more on that, Chris. Very interesting.
Well, I'm glad we could get that in there quickly. But now we're moving again, sort of another far turn, from India to Madagascar.
Madagascar, they voted for a new parliament last week, but let's find out what are they actually listening. This is one of the biggest pop stars in Madagascar at the moment. It's Lima with Mamei. I like the Malagasy rhythms there. Very sunny.
Very good rhythms, very catchy. It's a good catchy tune. I like that. I'll take that. I like that it's from Madagascar. Once again, we have a local number one.
I couldn't really find the lyrics for the song, but looking at the video, which is, high budget, I would say, there's a woman, she receives two small action men on her house. One is wearing a suit, and the other one is not wearing a suit, so it's scrappy. But then she falls in love with one in the suit, and then he wants revenge. So it's all very weird.
The guy not in the suit wants revenge.
Yes, and he's the singer. It's Lima.
Oh, I see.
Not the capital of Peru.
Okay, no, not the capital of Peru, no. But speaking of Peru, we are heading to South America, Central Latin America next. Oh, I struggled with that transition, so we're just going to ignore that. But we're going to Mexico. Of course, they had big elections too.
Big election. Their first female president, Claudia Sheinbaum. Very interesting news from the country. And I have to say, Chris, I think we've mentioned this before. Mexico is going through a tremendous phase musically. Their artists are being exported, especially to the US, and they're doing very, very well, including those two that from the song that is number one at the moment is Natanael Cano and Oscar Maidon with the song called Madonna. Let's have a listen.
Okay, so which Madonna are we talking about?
It is the one I love, the Queen of Pop. So basically, I think the song is comparing the love of his life to all those divas, including Lady Gaga. So the song is it's a little bit about ostentation. So he says, "You are my Madonna today. I will move the world for you." So it's quite cute, I like Madonna. So, I like that. I like that tune.
You don't just like Madonna, Faye. Let's be honest.
I love it. And the song has this kind of corrido beat, which is it's like poetry, which is part of the Mexican music scene as well.
It's it sounds like a very classic Mexican tune, but it's a good one. Interesting. Well, let's move on to not our number one, but our later in the alphabet for this countdown. South Africa also once again. Big historic elections. What's the music scene like?
The music scene is fantastic. Their music genre, Mapiano, is conquering the charts worldwide. I think it's a very creative music scene. There's so many amazing songs coming out, but this one, thanks to a dance challenge, is doing very well, not only in South Africa, but in other countries as well. I'll tell you about the dance challenge later, but this is Tito M and Yupe with Chwala Ban. The dance challenge is very simple, Chris. I think it's like basically you have to move your shoulders in a very fast way, like almost in a throbbing way. It's like just move your shoulders.
Move your shoulders as fast as you can.
As fast as you can, like this.
And keep up with the beat. Move your shoulders.
I think it's good exercise.
What do you win? Is this just like videos everywhere in sort of South Africa popping up of people gyrating their shoulders?
You win recognition on TikTok. I think that's good enough, right?
It's all about recognition, isn't it, on social media at the end of the day? Fernando Augusto Pacheco, thank you very much.
And that's all we've got time for this week's edition of The Curator. The show was produced by David Stevens and presented by me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Join us again next week, and thank you for listening.